Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 5 Episode 7, Rest and Resolutions. Sorry this was late guys, but as I mentioned in my reaction for the recent RWBY Chibi episode that we got on Monday, and on my Twitter, I am now currently over in England for the next few weeks. And as such, I also had a busy few days recently flying over here and getting settled. Hopefully things should be okay moving forward in terms of my regular upload schedule, but if there are any updates, then please be sure to follow me on my Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for the latest information. Also, please watch the recent episode through the official sources and be aware that spoilers are ahead. So after all that, let's see some of your comments from the previous episode review. And remember that if you want to see your thoughts in a future review, please be sure to share them in the comments down below. And tune in next time to see if they pop up. Obviously, there were a lot of feels going on in episode 6, thanks to the latest RWBY reaction. But a lot of you guys were mostly buzzing over Raven and Yang's discussion. Diver AMVs is concerned that Weiss and Yang may have doubts over Ozpin that could lead to a possible splintering in the future. Meanwhile, a thirsty fish quite likes the suspicion that could bloom from Raven's frustrating yet cryptic take on things. And finally, Done and Dusted suggested that Ty's role in Ozpin's plan could simply be that he was dragged along as a bystander, and as a result of this crazy mess that he found himself in, Ty missed out on having a happier family life. That's quite tragic if that ends up being the case. Quite the handful of hot topics thanks to the mysterious bird mother, and the last episode did leave us with some warm emotions to go along with it as well. Now that we've reached the halfway mark of the volume though, what impact did this latest chapter leave on me? Let's find out. We open with... oh god, now I'm hungry. 1 second. Much better. So, as I was about to say, after eyeballing some very tasty looking food, we see Weiss and Yang's return has called for catching up over dinner. This opening segment is a major delight, harkening back to the old days back at Beacon, filled with laughs, banter, and the group's tight-knit bond on full display through every sharing of recent events. Jean gets teased for all the map-dropping moments in Volume 4, but he also gets due praise for his skill in fighting off the Knuckleavi, as does Ren, who bashfully apologizes for his unhinged outburst during the scuffle. The group then hear about Weiss's incident at the charity party, nearly killing that rude trophy wife with an accidental summoning, and though Nora is doubtful of the validity of that tale, an up-close and personal example sends her flying for another bout of laughs. Honestly, it's just good seeing the gang laugh again, even at each other's own goofiness. Then the focus shifts to Yang sharing the gang her new prosthetic arm, with everyone quickly impressed. Nice to see Yang embracing her new development so strongly, even if she does have the emotional scars laying underneath. She's moved forward enough to accept the change, and promises to make sure that she can still be of use to the group, so that's good news. Naturally, RWBY, being the weapon nerd that she is, starts squealing like a fango over the new upgrade. But Nora wants to see if it's up to the challenge of a good old-fashioned arm wrestle. Weiss, by the way, has fit in once again to her sensible figure within the group, and dismisses the need for such antics. Though, even though the two ignore her to start their contest, Weiss also returns to another entertaining side of herself, being this straight man to RWBY's bubbly silliness. Yang's prosthetic is quite capable of handling a test of strength with Nora, and Yang's got an ace up her sleeve to help out, quite literally as well, as she shows off a new feature, and no, it's not that kind of feature, you perverts. It is in fact a rocket punch that sends Nora flying back with a thud. Awesome! I hope to see some fun ways that can actually be worked into Yang's fighting style, especially with how quick Yang can maneuver around the battlefield to recover her limb thanks to her gauntlet recoil. It's clear to see that Yang is embracing the new arm as a part of who she is now, with these light-hearted jokes, which is a fine improvement for the former reclusive blonde. And speaking of light-hearted, we also get some light teasing with the classic Vomit Boy and Ice Queen nicknames making a playful return. though sadly no snow angel to complete the set. At least there's Nora and Yang playfully ribbing Weiss for her past attitude to make up for it. This feels so much like a Volume 1 or a Volume 2 moment, and I'm so glad to see that, for as much as the group have gone through some rough times, a lot of them are still a very supportive and inseparable bunch of friends, regardless of the times that they've been apart. Ren then shares some wisdom on each of them having taken steps to better themselves from their less than perfect attitudes in the past, and the fact that they admit where they have gone wrong is very important in understanding where it is they grew stronger, and where they can still improve. Though out of all of them reflecting on this, Jean is probably the most cutting at his own faults. I at least get the vibe that he wishes he did things a lot differently during his time at Beacon, like his flawed attempts to win Weiss's affections, his struggles with his training, and of course, his inability to save Pyrrha and understand her feelings until it was too late. It's a clear, deep wound in the young lad, and a major cause for him to will himself further to avoid a repeat incident. As much as he has grown stronger and more mature, that pain and regret won't leave him for some time. We get some more advice being shared, and more fooling around with the youngsters, before Crow and Oscar appear, meaning that it's time for some serious talk, as we then jump to a tense period later on after the group have compared information. Yang and Weiss are now in the know as much as Team Ranger, and they're more accepting, it seems, of maidens, magic, and Salem being real things. Though when Ozpin asks Yang if this matches up with Raven's information, she's noticeably stoic with a firm stare and crossed arms. I imagine she's trying to absorb everything she's been told from both Ozpin and Raven's side of the story, but there's one topic that she wants Ozpin to address that he hasn't yet. What he did to Crow and Raven with the bird transformation power. Ozpin hasn't told Team Ranger about that since he's joined them, as seen with the group's surprised looks, and even Ozpin is perplexed to hear that Raven has shared that information, touting it as a sign of trust between Raven and her daughter, though I don't think Yang sees it that way, and neither do I. Anyway, Ozpin starts to explain that even though he is cursed, it comes with the benefit of having some magic of his own, like the maidens, likely birthed from the curse coming from the gods, and with it, he gifted the Brandwins the power to see beyond what they could in their limited human bodies, with the aid of turning into birds. Ozpin has a slight chuckle over the oddity of such an action, but it's no laughing matter to the Ranger lot. I've heard some people are lost as to why this would surprise the kids after everything else they've seen and heard lately, and while I can kinda understand what they mean, keep in mind that even in this world of special semblance powers, god-given curses, and magical maidens, they've never heard or seen transformations up until now. So I suspect that that's where the confusion lies, as this is beyond what they suspect a human is capable of, magic or no magic. Either way, the group seems skeptical to believe it, with Jean once again the standout reaction with his sour dismissal, in a manner not too different to how he acted during Crow's campfire explanation last volume. Glimpses perhaps of some negative emotions when it comes to Ozpin that I hope gets explored very soon, as I suspect it will factor into his next stage of growth. But even with the group's confusion, Weiss recalls that Raven pulled off the trick as clear proof, and then Yang decides to angrily question why Ozpin did this to her uncle and mother, though Crow calms her down before she gets too heated. Despite it sounding bad from Raven's point of view, and from Ozpin's carefree tone, Crow says that it was a choice that the siblings wanted and accepted willingly. Ozpin shares his side of things afterwards, starting with saying that it wasn't a rash move nor an easy one to make, but he needed assistance in info gathering on Salem's actions and locating the maidens when their identities were unknown, as seen when Crow tracked down Amber just in time to save her from Cinder's first attack. Ozpin hasn't done this, by the way, with the others like Ironwood or Glinda, which is a shame, as I kinda would've liked to see Glinda become an owl or Ironwood become a woodpecker. But back on track, the headmaster admits that gifting the power to the Brandwins, while a small amount of magic, came from a limited and declining amount of magic that he currently possesses, thanks to an action from his past. And here we finally get confirmation within the show and from the man himself that centuries ago, Ozpin was indeed the wizard that gifted as much magic as he could muster to the first seasonal maidens. It's so great to finally get that confirmed in canon, while we still wait for a similar confirmation for Ozpin being the last King of El, even though it seems pretty much cemented at this point. But I want to know Ozpin's tone in this segment. He's not making light of the situation like with the bird power talk, nor is he as positive sounding as he often comes off as. But when addressing giving his power to the maidens in the hopes that they would use that power for good, there's a slight pause, like he is reflecting on something that may have happened in the past, alongside some rather peculiar facial expressions that seem to back that up. It might just be me, but I think there may have been an incident in the past where the maiden power was abused, and as a result, Ozpin lost some faith in the world, saddened to see that his well-intentioned gift that he gave to his friends was being used for bad means. It also made me reflect on the last sentence of the World Remnant that was focused on the seasonal maiden fairy tale, which said that the group promised to meet with the wizard every year to visit their dear friend. Ever since I heard that line, I wondered that if one day maybe the maidens didn't fulfill their promise, and how that might have affected the wizard. He was a hermit before they helped him embrace the world again, so how would he have taken a broken promise like that if it also tied in to the power being misused? It might be why Ozpin in his speech sounded so desolate when talking about the original maidens. Even if this theory of mine is not the case, Ozpin clearly has been cautious when it comes to offering any knowledge or power beyond the maidens, his inner circle, and when desperate for extra aid, the Branwins. And even then, he's recently had to deal with some more complications that could lead to his trust wavering, thanks to Ironwood's rogue plans and Lionheart being suspicious. So he has kept a lot of truths close to the chest in terms of offering full information to his students, despite not wanting to lie to them, to avoid any negative ramifications that could follow. And it's interesting that Ozpin is saying that his power is declining. Could that be due to the curse taking its toll on him after many years? Or was it down to just simply how much he gave to the maidens in the first place? It would explain why Ozpin had such a hard time defeating Cinder and Salem if he's getting weaker each time out. Still, he makes it clear that everyone has a choice in this battle, and the Branwins accepted their responsibilities until Raven abandoned hers for her own means, likely based on what she said last time out regarding Salem being too powerful to beat, so she opted out, thinking that Ozpin was using her for an impossible battle. So now, it's the youngsters' turn to make their choice. To stay on this path knowing the risks that they may face, or to leave now, an option that Ozpin doesn't consider shameful compared to accepting and then running away later on. A statement I think clearly based on Raven's decision, and once more it makes Ozpin come off as someone who has been hurt by broken trust and his aid being misplaced. Thankfully, no one voices their intent to leave as they take in what they've now learned, but Yang does rise to share her mind once again. If Ruby will stay, she will too, to support her sister that always seems to know the right thing to do. But she wants Ozpin to understand that if everyone is willing to risk their lives to fight alongside him and put faith in his cause against Salem, then they shouldn't be left in the dark. From now on, for as long as they stay together, Ozpin can't lie or give out half-truths. The kids are willing to put their faith in each other and in some ways him as well, so it's only right that he puts in some trust as well. It's a fair demand for Yang to make, after Raven's comments as well, showing that even after their volatile reunion, Yang did take on board what she was told, as reason enough to at least be somewhat cautious. And it's good to see Yang wanting to make sure that the group aren't being led blindly by someone who won't trust them. I suspect Ozpin will still have some secrets left to share, and they could still rock the group's faith some more depending on what it's worth, but Ozpin does accept Yang's demands either way. The topic then moves on to what is the next plan of attack. Despite Yang and Weiss's arrival, the group is still left without the amount of huntsmen that they hope to get, and it's left them unsure where to go next. But deciding on that will have to wait, as Ozpin wants to let these kids savor their pleasant moments together after so long apart, especially considering the dangers awaiting them. He said pretty much the same thing after all to RWBY back at the dance, and even now he wants the team to still enjoy their youth and happier times, which is fine by me if it leads to more silly bits like Nora only just now getting the irony of Crow and Raven being turned into birds. Ah, Nora, never change. The episode then starts to wrap up as we then jump back to Raven's tribe, and this goofball of all people, who has now gone from being known as the Shady Man in the credits to now having a full name. Shady Man. God damn it, RWBY. Anyway, the guy's week gets worse and worse, as we then get the arrival of Emerald and Mercury, who actually finally speaks in the main show again, and has less defined eyebrows too. Happy days! Well, not really, cause they're also joined by Watts and Cinder, the villains ready to make their entrance in search of the Spring Maiden. The episode may have been a bit of a slow-paced character bonding piece for the majority of its runtime, but this cliffhanger already sets up a mouth-watering scenario the next time that we tune into events here. Could we see a Fall Maiden versus a Spring Maiden fight? How will Cinder cope in her first proper fight since her recovery? Will we see Dr. Watts' weapon, or is he just there to try and help win Raven over to their side, before things possibly, and most likely, get physical? And if so, what will happen to Raven and Vernal? Despite Raven's issues with Ozpin and her strained relationship with her family, we know Raven isn't a fan of Salem, so I doubt she'll be willingly surrendering Vernal or joining the witch's side. Even if Cinder and the others do try and feign an amicable allegiance that Raven could benefit from, it'll likely fall on deaf ears, so a fight will break out. Will Raven and Vernal survive? Possibly. I mean, I could totally see one or two of them having to fall back and escape via Raven's portal semblance, which could mean they may end up with our heroes. If that's the case, then that could lead to Raven accepting working with Crow, Yang and Ozpin as a last resort, which also might help our group out with their lack of additional aid for the eventual Haven attack, at least until Raven either backstabs the group, they lose, or Raven gets some payback. So the episode is notable in its small contents and short runtime. It's the shortest episode we've had since PvP back in Volume 3, and yeah, while I will always welcome as much RWBY goodness as possible, I went into this episode expecting a tamer watch, as not only was this episode released during the Thanksgiving week, so it's fair to ask less of a busy and very hardworking team during the holiday, but also the episode was all about exactly what the title said, some rest and resolution for the group. This is simply a calm before the storm episode, a slower paced, short watch before the heavier hits soon to come. We all wanted to see the group catch up anyway, I'm sure, and it did lead to a lot of entertaining and colourful interactions, stuff that the group has been needing after everything they've been going through. The more carefree reflection and silliness thankfully didn't overstay its welcome before the more important discussion later on. The characters retelling noteworthy events was left for small gags and reactions that added up to a fun-filled opener, with some character insight as well comparing the kids' strengths to their past faults, before the rest of the episode was more grounded and focused. I don't see how they could have added any fights or action to satisfy those craving for more, and we already know that the latter half of the volume is more than likely going to be very intense, so people passing this episode away simply for being a talkative heavy one might be missing out on what it has to offer both short term and long term. Our heroes fitted right back into familiar roles within the group like they never split, showing just how strong their bonds are. So much so that they feel safe just to let their head down for once, like the likes of Weiss, Yang and Jean, even forgetting for just a moment about their scars and emotional pain, as well as what lies ahead for just a brief bit of hijinks and understanding. this is the kind of stuff that helps me connect to a cast, to care about who they are and how much they've grown over the years. I'm thankful for this moment because before we return to the high stakes drama on the war zone, moments like this are where we can see how far a character's development or nature has shifted, and it would be harder to grasp that in the middle of a fight. And it helps that I was laughing and smiling a ton throughout this reflective segment, thanks in large part to Yang and Nora, as well as probably the most expressive facial animations in the volume so far. I know I've been doing a lot of praising for that particular animation element, but it does deserve a lot of high praise, and this episode was no exception to that. Once things simmered down for the important talk, it was still solid stuff. The clarity on Ozpin being the wizard is very much welcomed, as is the captivating exploration of Ozpin's side of things. I do admit to having some doubts about Ozpin's intentions and his past, but at the same time, I do feel sorry for the guy. His expressions and Aaron's stellar voice acting portraying a side to the former headmaster that makes him a lot more human than before, as we unravel more to the mysterious man. And if Yang's speech about wanting Ozpin to trust them more is anything to go on, I'm looking forward to seeing how the kid's continued maturity and growth will have an effect on Ozpin, perhaps reigniting his faith in the world once more, just like the original maidens did so long ago. Jean and Yang's subtle yet engaging emotions were fun to observe, building so hopefully towards a more thrilling emotional moment for them, and the callback gangs were a treat as well, as a longtime fan, capped off with an effective hype building setup for a hostile fight next time that we head back to Raven's HQ. In terms of my voice acting gold star of the episode, it's quite hard to decide, as honestly the cast as a whole were excellent with no one really standing out above the rest. So I'll give it this time to Samantha Island, who is always so energetic with her performance and yet never coming off as annoying or just too much to handle. Her comedic delivery is just that damn good. So overall, I say it was an okay episode. Clearly not the most jam-packed nor the most beneficial in terms of pushing the main narrative further, but again, it's a calm before the storm, and by no means was it a terrible episode. It was short, sweet, and to the point, with the character interactions and emotions being the biggest highlight. There's definitely more brewing for aspects like Jean and Yang's internal struggles and Ozpin's deeper mysteries and his own emotional turmoil, so it's not just a comedy-tinged episode, and while it was a quick watch, it still managed to offer up some entertainment on multiple levels, even if it's not to the same quality as episodes previous. Maybe if the volume didn't have the 2 extra episodes, then I probably would be frustrated with what we got, regardless of it being a Thanksgiving release. But the volume's length and the strong episode quality so far allows for an episode like this to get by without making any real damages in my eyes. Doubly so since I still came out of it with plenty of smiles shared and excitement rising for the second half, which hopefully hits the ground running very soon. But those are just my feelings on the episode. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Were you okay with a shorter episode? What's your take on Ozpin right now? And are you excited for what's gonna happen next now that Cinder and her gang are on Raven's doorstep? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe and bell buttons to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop. And follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for more on all things RWBY, future content from yours truly, and more. Until next time though, have a good day or good night, and peace out.